inshallah, of our 3 religious webinar following our webinar schedule. Inshallah, in this webinar, we'll look at the Hajj as a pillar of Islam, the meaning and essence of this worship of our 3 religious webinar following our. And then we're fortunate to have these scholars who will be addressing us, traveling with us on Hajj, inshallah, and answering our questions and reminding us of the rites we need to perform on Hajj. So before we start, the webinar format will be as follows. So we'll have the lecture with Shaykh Ruzwan today for around 30 to 35 minutes. Then we'll allow 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A. And then we'll close with 5 minutes of any announcements and updates we need to give. We're not going to take any admin questions today. We can use the Telegram for that and the admin webinar, the Tuesday admin webinars, inshallah. So we'll stick to the topic. So any religious questions that you have related to what the Shaykh will talk about, we'll take those, and any other religious questions pertinent to religious questions that you have, we'll take them as well, inshallah. We have a couple already prepared, so we'll go through those, and then inshallah we'll move to the open Q&A through the chat, inshallah. We'll try and finish within an hour, maximum 1 hour and 15 minutes. So we'll start very soon. So Shaykh Ruzwan, a brief background and biography of Shaykh Ruzwan. So he graduated in geopolitics and Arabic from the University of Glasgow, and then traveled and spent time studying with a number of leading scholars in the Muslim world. His main studies were in Syria, where he graduated from Al-Fatah Islamic Law College in Damascus, completing a 6-year program with the distinction of merit and achieving overall first position in his year of graduation. He is the author and educational director of the I-Syllabus Islamic Studies program, as well as the editor-in-chief for the I-Syllabus for Schools Islamic Studies curriculum. He's been a regular television panelist on shows such as the BBC's The Big Question and BBC Radio 4's religious analysis programs, and serves as an advisor to various Muslim organizations. And he currently resides in Istanbul. So without further delay, I'll hand over to you, Sheikh.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد خاتم الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحابته أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. And welcome to this, which is this is the first religious session of the Hajj program that we have arranged. And I've been honored to start off the discussions and the pitch the first thinking points for Hajj this year, inshallah. And I'll be, inshallah, also accompanying you throughout the journey. It's quite an interesting journey. I've performed Hajj, I think probably 6, 7 times now. Every single one has been different. Every single one has been part of my rizq. You know, our sustenance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not just our wealth, but also the companionship, also the events that take place and the experiences that we have during the journey. And speaking about the essence of Hajj, you know, it's a poignant start to our discussions, because I think Ibn Ata'illah al-Iskandari, very famous spiritual scholar and legal scholar of our tradition, he said something I think is worth noting and taking time to consider. He said, "Man ashraqat bidayatuhu ashraqat nihayatuhu." Whoever has a bright and auspicious start will have a bright and auspicious ending, you know. And this means that if you start off with the right intention, if you start off on the right foot, as they say in our language, and you set out with the right purpose, everything else fits in place. It's the same with your businesses, it's the same with your relationship with your family and your spouses. It's the same with every single interaction that you do. It's the same also with businesses and everything that you do in your worldly life as well. So one of the important things about Hajj is to get that essence right. And when I was thinking about essence of Hajj, there's numerous things. If I was to ask people, you know, Hajj, what's the essence of Hajj? What do you think is at the core of Hajj? And in fact, if I was to ask the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that same question, what I would guarantee you is that the Prophet ﷺ would respond with different answers depending on when he was asked, at what point in the journey he was asked, who asked him, and why they asked him. The Prophet ﷺ was such an amazing teacher that he would be able to give you the answer that was most pertinent to you, and it would be the best of answers. And so when I was thinking of the essence of Hajj, I thought of four things. The first thing was it's related to intention, and I'm going to touch upon why that is. So essence as intention. The second thing in terms of essence, the very core of Hajj, is also related to behavior. In other words, when you're on this journey from this moment until you finish the rites of Hajj, there's going to be a certain type of behavior, certain type of action, certain type of way of carrying yourself in Hajj. And I saw this, last year when there was so many difficulties, and the years before there been so many difficulties. Your behavior is really important, and that's an aspect of essence. There's also, for me, when you talk about Hajj and the essence of Hajj, I think of a place, a very specific place. You probably guessed where it is. I don't know if you guessed right, but you've probably guessed one place in Hajj which I would consider to be the essence of Hajj. And the last thing would be what you come back with, the result. You come back and you essentially have what we would consider to be um, what you've earned as the essence. You come back with something which is the essence of your experience. So the first thing is intention. The Prophet ﷺ very famously said, actions are by intention. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. And in the Hajj, it's very interesting that Allah, when He obliges us as Muslims with Hajj itself, Allah says, وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجَّ الْبَيْتِ مَنِ استطاع إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا. And in the Quran it says وَلِلَّهِ, and it's due to God, and it's for God. And that's interesting because it means it's not for when you get back you're called al-Hajji or Hajja. It's not because you come back and you can explain, you can sit down and at tea and tell everybody all your experiences of Hajj. It's not so that you feel that you're now before Hajj you can do whatever you want, and after Hajj you'll sort your life out as a lot of people think that they can do. No, walillahi, it is for Allah. Ala nasi hijj al bayt. The obligation of Hajj is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this issue of intention, if you think about it, it is the leverage that anything that you do in your life, leave aside Hajj for a moment, anything you do in your life, it is the special ingredient that makes something that's insignificant significant. Ibn Mubarak radiallahu anhu said that a small deed added with intention magnifies it. In other words, you've got a small thing and you did it for the right reasons. Like, we have the story of the Prophet Ibrahim being thrown into the fire, and we have stories of ants and small creatures coming with mouthfuls of water to put out the fire. That is all they could do, but their intention was powerful. And Ibn Mubarak also said a big deed, what we view to be amazing and courageous and weighty in the eyes of Allah, but it doesn't have the intention, it's diminished. And so, when we're starting, this is what we're coming up for, a month and a week or so until we start getting into actually the immediacy of Hajj. We need to think about this. One of our teachers, Al-Habib Al-Aidrus, he wrote a book. When I met him in Sayoun, he had written a book called Kitab al-Niyat, the Book of Intentions, in which he wrote down how you make an intention for, I'm drinking tea at this moment in time. What's my intention for drinking tea? What's my intention for speaking to you? What's your intention in inviting somebody over to your house for for tea or something, for lunch? What's your intention for going for a walk? He had a book on all these things, which means intention is really important. And if you go to the Hajj, you have the talbiyah. The talbiyah essentially is going to be the sign that you've started. Labbaik Allahumma labbaik la sharika laka labbaik. Oh Allah, here I am in your presence. Oh Allah, here I am at your behest. And that essentially is you saying something to say that I've made the intention of Allah. You've entered into ihram, oh Allah. And that is going to be really, really powerful, because it could, la samahullah, we pray to Allah it doesn't happen, but you have to have a really sincere intention so that Allah is listening to that and He is accepting you into His presence. Allah is accepting you into this essence. So that essentially is one of the most important cores of Hajj itself, which is the intention. And in fact, if you want to actually know what Hajj means, if you were to go into our great dictionaries of Arabic language and you to look at the word Hajj, Hajj actually means to intend. To intend, literally al-qasd. Qasd is like actually a stronger thing than intention. It is the firm resolve to do something and specifically to journey to God. Al-qasd ila al-mu'azzam. A journey to something that is weighty and majestic and powerful. So you don't just go to your corner convenience store, or you go to the park for a walk and it's not called a Hajj because it's not to something that's magnified and majestic. It's just a normal thing. But the Hajj, as a guest of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you need to think, you need to refocus on what's happening. So the first thing is essence is intention. I've mentioned the first thing because I think that's the most important thing. But with the intention is action. And this is why I would say the second aspect of essence would be your behavior. We're not going to talk about the fiqh, what you have to do. This is sunnah, this is wajib, the shoes that you have to wear, and the cosmetics that you can take. And as people know, I always end up having immense wonder over all the things that people bring to Hajj. They bring themselves, their toiletries, and the kitchen sink with them because, they feel that they need everything. Our behavior is really important here. And this is why behavior for me in Hajj is essentially related to this thing you all know about, akramakumullah, is it's taqwa. Taqwa is having an awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a deep-seated, it's almost careful awareness of the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala while you're doing what you're doing. And in Hajj, it's actually more important. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا تَفْعَلُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ يَعْلَمُهُ اللَّهُ وَتَزَوَّدُوا فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى. O believers, whatever you do out of good, and specifically this means during the days of Hajj, all the help that you give to other people, the kindness that you show, the patience that you exhibit during this time, Allah says, وَتَزَوَّدُوا, make provisions, take your kitchen sink, take all your toiletries, take every single thing that you think you need. But Allah then reminds you that if you're making provisions, فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى, that the best thing that you can do to take as provisions is something that is actually not something you can pack away. I can't say, okay guys, you need to get your slippers, sandals, this is what you need to do, your ihram and your toothpaste and this and that, and you need to put about 2 kilos of taqwa. It's not something that we can quantify, but Allah is saying it. فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى, that the best of provisions on this journey that God is telling you, who's ordering you, if God is ordering you to do it, and He's telling you the best of zad, the best of provisions is taqwa, that's significant because Imam Ghazali radiallahu anhu wa arda, great, as you know, the great mujaddid of our deen, he said that people come from deep ravines, from all over the world, traveling and struggling and making out towards the Hajj, and what they're essentially doing is as if they're coming into the presence of the court of the greatest of kings, the King of Kings. And in that court, what do you bring? I mean, I was at an event yet recently, and somebody was gifted something by a really important person in this country, Turkey, and you can imagine, what can you give a person that they don't have? What can you give a person that they will value? And when we're going in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're saying labbaik Allahumma labbaik. It's like you watch all these, we've never been, but imagine these historical episodes where people used to travel and then ask for the kind of ask for being presented into the court of the king, and they would have to bring something, and then they would put it in front of them and then unbox it, and they would say, this is what we brought: frankincense, gold, diamonds, a rare book, whatever it is. And what are we bringing? We're essentially going on Hajj. We're making this, what we're saying is this journey towards what is majestic and magnanimous and powerful and elevated, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's presence. What are we bringing? The only thing that Allah has told you is فَتَزَوَّدُوا فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى. Make provisions. the best of provisions is taqwa. Why is God telling us that? Because at the moment that we stand in front of Allah, it's that action and intention that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala essentially is going to look at us, because He subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us to strip ourselves of our worldly attire, everything that we wear, in our daily lives, all the embellishment that we have, all the signs who we are and what we've done and what we've achieved and who we know and where we live, and all these things are irrelevant. What you're coming to is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's presence with this idea of essence as behavior, taqwa. So that's two things that came to my mind when I was thinking of essence. One is intention, which is qasd, which literally means hajj, as I said. Second thing is behavior. And the behavior, just I remember, the issue of behavior means, that your hajj and the success of it will actually be found in your behavior during the hajj. And inshallah, other shuyukh will talk about, and I will talk inshallah during the hajj, when you'll actually need to listen to me, and you will have nowhere to go except to listen to me. In Mina, for example, I'll have to tell you to be patient. And that's when you need to really, okay, not just listen, but do. Sometimes very, very difficult. So that thing of zad and provisions of taqwa is really important. The third thing I would say in terms of essence is when the Prophet ﷺ himself, and the closest thing we can actually know and remember, that I can remember about the Prophet answering that question, what is the essence of Hajj, is when the Prophet said, Al-Hajju Arafah. I don't know if that came to your mind when I said, the essence of Hajj, what place is it? I can imagine a lot of people would have gone to Makkah al-Mukarramah, the Kaaba, and maybe, inshallah, some of you would have thought about Arafah, but we're going to talk, inshallah, in Arafah about Arafah, because you can't talk about Arafah unless you're in Arafah. I mean, Arafah now, you can go, if somebody's been to Umrah recently, they will go to Umrah and then they'll have these tours that go to all the places that you go to Hajj, but they're of no significance until you have the place and the time. Actually, it's not even the place. Arafah, famously is known to be the place where it's said that the Prophet Adam alayhi salatu wasalam descended and was reintroduced with his wife Hawa. It said that this is, there's many things said about the place itself, why it's significant, but it is said to be the Hajj itself. It is said to be quintessentially the very core of Hajj. Al-Hajju Arafah. The Prophet said, Hajj equals Arafah. Now, if you're going to say, what's the essence? Well, you can't get a better essence than that, because the place is going to be significant, but we have to add to that something which is time. In other words, Hajj is Arafah, means nothing unless you're there, not just in the place of Arafah. And inshallah, when you go, you'll see all these signs saying you've now entered into the plain of Arafah, and you'll have almost surreal in terms of if you've not been, may Allah allow us to go together, you'll see these surreal, majestic signs saying you're in the plain of Arafah. But we're going to go at a specific time, which means that if you go a day before, you go a day later, it's not going to have the essence of Hajj. It's going to be the time and the place. Time and the place. And this is so interesting because it's in those places, like Malcolm X, when he went on Hajj himself, these are the places where he, in Muzdalifah, for example, where he sat and he slept and he listened to everybody snoring. He realized after coming from America, where black people were unable to go into a cafe without being thrown out, unable to go in public transport without being accosted and attacked. He said he realized at that point, and he had reacted by saying, the black people need to separate and they need to, completely disassociate with other people. It's only in Hajj, it's only when the time and the place came together that he realized that everybody snores in the same language. And does it take you to strip yourself of your normal clothing, your normal countenance, the normal way that we present ourselves, and just go right back to our humanity, as we will do in Arafah, where during the last moments of the day of Arafah, as the sun is setting, you will then, as much as you can on this earth, have to slowly strip yourself of every worldly connection that you have. And it's at that point you look around. Remember last year we were in the plains of Arafah, and I was looking around, and there was people. There was actually very famous people that I've seen, sports people, and there was all sorts of people, and they were. You could see that their title was nothing now, and they were just reconnecting with their basic connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of being humans and the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, individuals standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and beseeching Allah to essentially alleviate them of the weight of their wrong actions on earth, and to allow them to be embellished and to be appropriated within the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's a shift that always happens. And in that place you will see, Sufyan ibn Uyayna radiallahu anhu said that you will see people in the plains of Arafah during that point when you're actually in the very essence of Hajj itself, that you will have people who are closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than anybody else. And it may well be that your ameen or your dua is responded to by a person standing right next to you, is so close to Allah that you would never imagine, who will say ameen to your dua, and you'll be accepted because of the ameen of the person next to you. And this is why when we think of the essence of Hajj in terms of place, which is Arafah, it is the place where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens up a glimpse into the mercy, which is the whole purpose of essentially the journey, which is to know the unending nature of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy. Because Sufyan ibn Uyayna also said that, he was asked who's the worst of people on the day of Arafah. He said a person who comes to the plains of Arafah and looks amongst the people that are supplicating, and does not supplicate because he does not think, or she does not think, that they will not be forgiven. And so there's the essence. The essence is the place. The place is important because at that point you get a glimpse into the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you also have one of the most significant, in fact, the most significant day of the calendar, which is the day of Arafah, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is related in the hadith of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that during the last moments of the day of Arafah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frees more slaves than on any other day from the fire. And he looks upon the creation on Arafah, and he asks the angels, even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows why they're there, he says, ماذا أراد هؤلاء? What do these people want? What do they intend? And the angels respond, they seek your mercy. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I have forgiven them. And it's also said that Allah boasts to the angels about the actions of the sons and daughters of Adam, that they come from every single part of the world, through every ravine and narrow valley coming. And essentially what they're doing is they are manifesting this deep need of their creator in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. And so that's, for me, the third thing, which is the essence in terms of place. Now, the last thing is essentially essence in terms of something tangible. Because essentially, if I think back to last year's Hajj, towards the last moments of the Hajj, and saying our goodbyes, and the final, inshallah, we will go through the Hajj, and we will come to a farewell seminar as well. During the farewell seminar, it was surreal. I mean, I still remember, I can remember I was sitting. I can remember the pain in my knees and my feet, and the difficulties of the journey. It was extremely difficult last year. You remember the heat, and I can remember the sense of we're all, with one mind of traveling back, getting ready for our flights. But there's a sense of what do we go back with, preparing for life after Hajj, which is something else. But the result is, I think, the fourth thing, the essence as result, which essentially is, you'll all know, if you're on Hajj, if you've applied for Hajj and you've got through to this point in time where you have been accepted, and at the forefront of your mind is Hajj al-Mabrur. Hajj al-Mabrur is a Hajj which is an accepted Hajj, a Hajj which has been made blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is something that I think you cannot overemphasize, that there's actually such a thing as a result. Again, it depends on, if you ask the Prophet Ali salatu wasallam, what is a sign of a blessed and accepted Hajj, the Prophet mentioned a number of things. But what is interesting is, as I said, the Prophet used to answer different people in different ways because everybody is different. Every single person that will go on Hajj will have different capacities, will have different aims, will have different ways of showing their shukr to Allah, their gratitude to God. And there is one thing that I think is really important is coming back with an accepted Hajj, which is also mentioned to be a type of Hajj that you come back from as if you've been newly born from your mother. The Prophet ﷺ said, فَمَنْ حَجَّ فَلَمْ يَرْفُثْ وَلَمْ يَفْسُقْ رَجَعَ كَيَوْمِ وَلَدَتْهُ أُمُّهُ. That a person who performs a Hajj and does not engage in filthy speech and does not be an ingrate and rash comes back as if they have just been born from their mother. Now that is actions and that is result. You can see that this is how you behaved, which is with taqwa, and the result will be that you'll come back even as you were born from your mother's womb. And that cleansing is one of the things the Prophet said, one of the three things, the acceptance of it in the hadith of Amr ibn As radiallahu anhu, in which the Prophet said, the person who accepts Islam, it's as if they have no sin, and the person that does the hijrah has no sin, and the person that performs the accepted Hajj, it's as if they have no sin, and that's Hajj al Mabrur. This is again one of the things that we bring back from our journey to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala from the Hajj, which shows that we have connected with some aspect of it, and the Hajj al Mabrur also, you know, if you look at the actions that we do in the days of Hajj, and we look at how people extend themselves, one of the things is that they are generous, and the generosity actually is a sign of the acceptance of the Hajj. The Prophet ﷺ said one of the signs of the accepted Hajj is إطعام الطعام وطيب الكلام, is to give others food, is to feed others. And the Prophet, remember this, to make sure you understand exactly what I said, one of the signs of an accepted Hajj is that while you're in Hajj, you're feeding people, وطيب الكلام, and to speak well. So this is, I mean, some people find it difficult to restrain themselves, they find it difficult to control the urge to say something when they feel that they have the privilege to do that. And remember, if you're talking about essence, you're talking about, the place, you're talking about the intention, you're talking about the state of mind and the behavior that you have. All these will affect the result. And the Hajj al-Mabrur, which is the blessed Hajj, just those simple things of feeding and just having good speech is one of the ways. The Prophet ﷺ also said that one of the signs of a blessed Hajj is al-Ajj al-Thajj, which is to perform and to excel in performing talbiyah and to perfect your sacrifice of the animal. These are just actions that you do, which will be a sign of the fact that you've put a lot of effort in, a lot of thoughts in. You've gone out of your way to make sure that what you're doing is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's also said that it's al-Hajj la ri'a fihi wa la sum'a, which goes all the way back to the first thing I mentioned, which is an accepted Hajj is a Hajj within which there's no boasting and there's no showing off. Simple as that. The accepted Hajj is one that when you performed it, you to all put all the labels aside, all the things that you wanted to be known about or for on the earth, you put them aside and you said, "Oh Allah, I'm here for you." It's qasd il mu'azzam. It's turning to God, who is the most majestic, the most compassionate, the most merciful. And Hassan al-Basri actually provides one of the most interesting um, explanations for al-Hajj al-Mabrur, an accepted Hajj, in which it actually you can think about it right now, which is that you think when you're going, think of all the preoccupations that you have now. Think of all the things that are high in your agenda. So there's lots of things. I mean, across the world, there's wars going on. There's the unfortunate situation of the trauma and the genocide in Gaza. There's poverty. There's all these things. Less important, but economic pressures and wars in Ukraine. All these things, and our businesses, our welfare, difficulties in the economy. Everything is prioritized in our minds at this moment in time. And we do have this sense of thinking about the world or overthinking about the world. But Hassan al-Basri, he says that you return zahidun fi dunya, raghibun fil akhirah. That when you come back after Hajj, you should now be somebody who takes only enough interest in the world, meaning that it's not, as the scholar said, it's not in your heart, it's in your hand. You could have £1 billion as long as it's not in your heart. Zahidun fi dunya, raghibun fil akhirah. But you're desirous of God's pleasure, the hereafter. And so, when we talk about Al-Hajj al-Mabrur, we talk about all these things, we talk about the essence of Hajj, it's important that, I'll close with this, which is, because I'm starting with the essence of Hajj, I think it's important to point out that my experience of taking people on Hajj and my experience of speaking to people who've been on Hajj is that there's an over emphasis and an over focus on the minutiae, the small details, and when we, it might be the problem of the shuyukh as well, because we end up talking about really, really small details, when in essence, the Hajj is actually a very, very simple act of obedience to God. It's actually only the fasting is easier because you're not doing anything, but it's one of the simplest acts of worship, and is there just to focus you and to cut aside all the distractions that you have. And people that have been on Hajj, they'll know that you may come into the Hajj preoccupied with numerous things, and when you get to Hajj, everything's silent. Everything goes silent, and the perspective totally shifts. It is of that nature. The Hajj, the sacred precinct, the Haram, Arafah, the ziyarah to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, all these things, what they do is they shift the focus that we have on the dunya into the akhirah, from pleasing people to pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from thinking about, the day to day to thinking about the ultimate aim of things. To pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, the essence of Hajj is what we focus on. And inshallah, there will be chances to ask questions and to plan your worship. But the essence of Hajj, as I mentioned, these things that I mentioned, should be at the core of your understanding, at your core of your focus, inshallah. And that's half an hour. So I wanted to speak for half an hour to leave time for. So I take pride in being on time with these kind of things. So Jazakallah khair al-jaza. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. So, inshallah, all the reminders during Hajj, I don't need to keep a track of time because it'll be on time, inshallah. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour. That's good to know. Okay, so we have we have a couple of questions. We'll go with those. And then I think a common question, I think we discussed this previously. One of the questions we received last week, which I said we'll postpone it till today. And I think one of the sisters also asked similar question about the different types of Hajj and the steps of Hajj as well. Now, one thing I would say is, and this is addressed to the people listening, is that we will cover the steps of Hajj multiple times on multiple occasions as and when required. So we'll briefly go over some of the steps today, but also at the Hajj seminar, we'll have that opportunity there to go through the Hajj. Even during Hajj as well, we will go through the different steps of Hajj as and when it's required. So we want to give you the overall picture now, and then as we get closer and closer, we'll dig deeper and go into a bit more detail. We're conscious of overloading you with detail now. So there's a lot of information coming to you with, biometrics and these webinars and your physical preparation, your own reading, your memorization of your supplications and all of these things. So we're conscious that people are hungry for information, but at the same time, we have to balance and we have to stretch out the information that we give you. So yes, we'll go over the different types of Hajj today as well, inshallah. And the Shaykh will briefly go over the rituals. And we have prepared something which is in draft format now. It's 99% complete. We're just finalizing it, tweaking it with a bit of information, and we're going to upload it in our timeline resource. And you can click on that, and we'll share the different types of Hajj, like an infographic as well, inshallah. But before we go to that, there is a question, Sheikh. Somebody is saying or asking, I don't speak Arabic and I'm nervous about reciting anything in Arabic
Hmm.
in case I get it wrong, and therefore the meaning might be different.
Hmm.
Therefore, reciting my intention for Umrah as part of Hajj Tamattu, for instance, can I say my intention in English? This is a question from Honey.
Yeah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So that's a very straightforward, simple question, and the answer is as simple as the question itself. Yes, you can. Because remember, Hajj is intention, and as long as you're clear on what you're performing and you say it, just to reconfirm exactly what your intention is, that's all that's important. There's no specific and special privilege for a person that recites in Arabic or reads in Arabic. There says in Arabic. There's not a recitation. It's not a dua. So it's a very good question because most people, not just in this, but also in things like dua. But somebody else, another one of the shuyukh, I think, will be talking about dua itself. The dua itself as well is more privilege, and there's a degree of acceptance in the Arabic. But essentially, when we go to the Hajj, we'll speak about this about dua as well. There's no problem, inshallah, as long as you're clear about what you're doing and that you make it very clear in your mind and say it, inshallah.
Okay, and very quickly, we'll take this question as well because I think it's a quick one. Is who is the author of the Book of Intentions that you
I
mentioned?
just typed it up.
Okay, so that's been answered. Okay, so did you manage to have a look at the types of Hajj, the infographic I think I shared? I'll
Just yes,
bring
just a moment. Yes, did.
I'll bring it up on screen. I'll share my screen. And just to explain to people that this is in draft format, we're just tweaking some of the things, and we will share it inshallah with you all, so you have an overview. Um,
So
so go ahead.
yeah, so is this on? Okay, so one things I would say is as important is explaining the fiqh, and explaining what, ifrad is, what qiran is, what tamattu is also the fact that given your time schedule and what package you're going on will actually dictate in a lot of ways what your choices are. Because last year, I mean, I said this a year before as well. I gave advice to people on types of ihram to do, and because of the time constraints, and because people got so tired and were so exhausted by the initial days of Hajj, they were unable to complete the actions of the day of the day of Eid, which essentially for us is day of Eid. That obviously created big problems because we had people who were on wheelchairs and all sorts of things because they didn't take the advice of which ihram should be the best. In other words, they wanted to do too much, and people always underestimate. People say, why can't, for example, do tamattu because somebody else is doing tamattu. But your time may be so restricted that you're not able to. So the day, look at this: A4900, A4910, 12-day package, arriving on Monday, arrival into Mecca Tuesday, the 3rd of June, number of days before Hajj commences. Essentially, you have no time to acclimatize. And it'll still be very, I mean, last year was extremely hot, I think, in terms of records being broken. And unfortunately, Allah grant Jannah to the Shuhada who passed away. Many people passed away. And you cannot underestimate the acclimatization, the physical, strain that your body goes through. So one day before Hajj commences, essentially you're getting to Mecca and then you're moving on to Mina. What can you do in that day? And essentially you have to be, think one step ahead and think. I mean, I always think of the day of Eid itself. What's the actions? You're walking from Muzdalifah to Mina, and then from Mina you're going to be stoning, and then after stoning you'll be waiting for the sacrifice if you're sacrificing, and then you'll have to you can cut your hair, and then you will do the tawaf, and then you probably have to do a sa'i as well. So I'm thinking if somebody's in a very short period, they should try and speak to a scholar and perhaps do the sa'i earlier, something like that. So the first thing was listen to scholars in terms of don't just go with what you would like to do. Sometimes the time constraints are really important. I think that's important. In terms of the infographics, Abdullah, can you go
Yeah,
through
yeah,
the others? So in terms of infographics, there's three types of Hajj, meaning when you look at people, everyone's doing roughly, you think they're doing the same thing, but the intention is different. So there is one which is called ifrad, in which your intention will be that person who asks, "Can I do it in another language?" You would say, "Well, I intend only Hajj." That's you done your intention for ifrad. The person can say, "Well, I intend Umrah and Hajj combined." In English, they can say it, and that's intention completed. Or they can do tamattu, which is Umrah only, and then they come out the ihram and then Hajj. Okay, that's the intention. And so these three types, essentially the main difference is the intention and then what you do after that. So if you look at the ihram period, in other words, this is the amount of time you'll be in the restrictions. So for males, it will be indicated by the white clothing. For women, it will be not, having using perfumes and so on and so forth, and keeping the face uncovered. All that will be the restriction will be there for in terms of ifrad, it will be for the whole of the duration that you're in ihram, all the way until you come out of it during the day of Eid itself. And for the Qiran, it'll be the same thing, the same ihram. You'll do Umrah, you'll complete it, and then you'll wait, and then you'll go on to Mina and Arafah and so on and so forth. The ihram will remain on you. Tamattu is the one that if people come early to Mecca al Mukarramah, they come 4 days, 5 days, 7 days. People used to come 2 weeks before. They used to come to Mecca al Mukarramah in their ihram. They perform the Umrah, very simple, and then they have their hair shaved or cut, and they wear their normal clothes, and they wait for the day of Tarwiyah, which will be the day that we start moving from Mecca to Mina. They will then go back into the ihram from Mecca al Mukarramah, from the haram itself. So that's, the broad stroke. So you can see tamattu by its nature is one that you do if you're going to be there quite early. I mean, I would say 2, 3, perhaps 3 days, 4 days. So you've got people arriving on Sunday, the 1st of June, which is 2 or 3 days before Hajj. I would say, yeah, you could do tamattu because you do the Umrah within 4 or 5 hours, and then you can, you know, cut your hair, you can change into normal clothes, and you have a day, perhaps even 3 days, until you have to go into the ihram again for the Hajj. Makes perfect sense. And so, I mean, Hajj generally, unless, and so I would give it a number of pieces of advice. The first one would be if you're strictly following a school of law, then you need to just get specific advice, very strictly following a school of law, then, and you're insisting on doing something in a specific way. That's between your own discretion. But generally, in this day and age, with the number of people that are there and the restrictions that the government puts into place in terms of movements of people, it's very difficult for a large group to perform Hajj according to just one school of law. Every year I say, I think that maybe this year you could do it according to one school. It is almost impossible. Every time, I think of a scenario, there's something that happens in which I say, okay, you people who thought you were doing it according to this school weren't able to do it because of the fact that, this road was closed and there was restricted access and this and that. It's very important that you are aware of the fact that, the Sharia, our religious faith and the practice of the scholars is vast, and there's many opinions, and they all encompass the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So tamattu is one if you're early, 5, 6 days, even 2, 3 days, perfect. But if you're coming on a short period, then essentially you're either going to do ifrad or qiran. I mean, qiran is very similar in terms of how it looks according to the majority of scholars. But again, those are details. So what main thing would
yeah.
be tamattu if you're early. Don't do tamattu if you're going the day before, because doing the umrah and then moving and then all the things that you've not thought about in terms of the exhaustion will hit you on the days of Hajj, and inshallah, um, that will be something that you need to think about.
Okay, so just
So
to summarize then, for the 17-day, 14-day package, I think with the time they have after they arrive into Mecca, they should have enough to do tamattu, come out of ihram, spend a couple of days normal clothes, and then go
Mhm.
into ihram again. But those are coming on the 12-day package because they have only a day before before the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, before Hajj commences. The advice is obviously it depends on what people, if they have a specific following a specific school of law, but the advice is ifrad is probably more appropriate for them.
Mm. Yes.
That's a summary. Okay.
And so the only outcome of that is, in terms of if you do ifrad, is whether you sacrifice or not. If you do ifrad,
Yeah.
you don't need to sacrifice. With the other two, Qiran and tamattu, you do need to sacrifice.
Yeah. And then what we did in these infographics is just to do a quick Umrah in 4 steps. And I think further on Hajj Tamattu, we've updated this following the advice from the Shaykh, which is the Hajj in 10 steps. So what we did instead is we've done one for Umrah just to follow on. This is all going to be one file. So we've got the summary or the front page, let's say, is this Ifrad Qiran Tamattu. Then we'll have the Umrah and then the Tamattu and then Ifrad if you're doing Ifrad. So all of this, we're just going to tidy it up and get some advice from the Sheikh who's going to look over it, and then inshallah we'll share it with everybody. But if you want to run through the steps, Sheikh, very quickly, and then yeah,
Yeah, so the Umrah is self-evident. Umrah is all about ihram, which means your intention. What are you doing? With Umrah is Umrah. So this would be the first part of tamattu. So if you saw that tamattu was essentially you're doing Umrah and then you're coming out of Umrah and then you're going to Hajj with a separate ihram, this would fit in perfectly with that, which is essentially you do the ihram, you go through all the steps of cutting, doing a ghusl and putting on your ihram clothes, doing 2 rak'at and then making the intention, then starting with labbaik, Allahumma labbaik. And then essentially you come to Mecca, you do the tawaf, you do 2 rak'at. After you finish the tawaf, you drink zamzam, and you go to sa'i back and forth 7 times. And then you come out cutting your hair. It's very simple. I mean, that's the thing. As an act of worship, it is very simple. I think people overcomplicate the details. If they read this, these simple steps, the 4 steps that you have, are very straightforward, and that's Umrah. And obviously, we're not going for Umrah, we're going for Hajj. So essentially, you have the step one, which is the Ihram. The Ihram is the same as we just talked about now. And when you get to Mecca al Mukarramah, you'll do a tawaf, which is called Tawaf al Qudum. And then, depending on what type of Ihram you had, if it was Tamattu', as we said, you do Umrah and then you come out and you wait. If it's Ifrad, then what you do is you do Tawaf al Qudum and then you wait for the journey onto Mina. And this is essentially this is the Ifrad diagram. So this is how many steps? This is 11 steps here. So you go into Ihram, step 2, arrival into Mecca al Mukarramah, and then it's mentioned there, do Tawaf al Qudum. And there, step 2 is very important. Straight under that is one may choose to perform the sa'i of Hajj on this day instead of 10th of Dhul Hijjah. So I would definitely recommend, like almost obligate. I remember I said this in the last 2 groups I've been with, that I actually said that you should do this, which is do the ifrad, and then after you've done Tawaf al Qudum, which is the first thing you do when you come to Mecca, you'll have time to do sa'i. Do the sa'i, that will count as your sa'i that you would have done on the the final days of Hajj when you're doing
yeah,
the
right.
tawaf. Yeah, so step 8. And I guarantee doing getting to Makkah al Mukarramah, doing the tawaf when it is in Scottish we say heaving, which essentially means there's no space to breathe, and it is you know such a exhausting experience because you're doing it in the middle of the day essentially or whatever. If you're getting late, you're coming late because you're tired, and then to do the sa'i. I've seen people last year unable to do the sa'i, doing 1 or 2 rounds and being unable to continue. If you can do that when you're slightly fresh, do it in step 2. I would definitely underline that, and it means that you know everything else will fit in place, inshallah. So then you go into Mina, which is step 3. Mina is just a stepping stone to Arafah. You go to Arafah and then you go to Muzdalifah that evening, and then next day is essentially the big day that you do, which is from Muzdalifah you go to Mina, and essentially, logistically, we usually go to the camp, settle down, and then go for the first stoning of the shaitan. And then you have the other acts, the sacrifice of the animal if you're doing that, and cutting the hair, and then the tawaf az-ziyara, which is the big tawaf. That's the one which is normally the day of Eid. You go and you do that. If you've not done your sa'i prior to this early, what we call prepay, I always call it a prepaid sa'i, which you've done in advance, so you don't have to do it now. And then essentially you just go back to Mina, step 9, back to Mina for the days of pelting. And step 10 would be an extra day if you have time. And then the final thing to wrap up the whole of Hajj with Tawaf al-Wida. So Tawaf al-Wida is the farewell tawaf, which is, wajib according to majority and sunnah according to Malik. But again, all these things, there's lots of details. A question in the actual Q&A about what would you recommend, tips, balanced understanding of the essence of Hajj and the details. So I actually did say in the talk that you should, at this moment in time, just get your focus in on the fact that what's important is the essence, what you're there to do, what's the purpose, because the details will essentially take your attention away from the purpose. There'll be plenty of people there that you can ask. There's plenty of opportunities to make sure that your Hajj is done properly in terms of detail. Allah, I don't believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put these details in to catch people out when they're doing worship. I know that. Scholars answer detailed questions because people ask detailed questions. That's it. Whereas the Prophet Ali salatu wasalam, one of the amazing beauties of the Prophet sallallahu was that he accommodated people's situations, and he made, the religion easy to apply, easy to practice, easy to feel pleasure from. And it was a source of nourishment and a source of encouragement and a source of empowerment for the people that followed him sallallahu. And we should also be the same, so this is something that I think hopefully in the journey we will be able to extend to you.
So just to add to what the Sheikh mentioned, so the different, so for tamattu, we do the umrah, we trim or shave the hair to come out of ihram, and then the restrictions of ihram are lifted. So we stay normal in normal clothes, and for the 2-3 days we're in Mecca before Hajj commences. Now for ifrad,
Mm-hmm.
when we come into ihram, we come into Mecca, we perform the tawaf, and we do the two sunnah behind Maqam Ibrahim, we drink the Zamzam, and then if you want to prepay, as the Sheikh said, the sa'i, which he recommends also, which I also agree with the Sheikh, I recommend doing it on this day. You do the sa'i, but you don't cut or shave your hair. You don't come out of ihram. You still have to stay in your ihram and wait till the following day, 8th of Dhul Hijjah, when Hajj commences, and you carry on. And then on the day of Eid, you do only your tawaf. You don't need to do sa'i because you did it on the 7th of Dhul Hijjah when you first came into Makkah. So that's just the anyone's point. I just wanted to reiterate. And for this one, as we said, it's recommended for the sacrifice. It's not obligatory, as we mentioned earlier. So ifrad. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. But as the Sheikh said, all of these details, I know we're going to go over this again in the Hajj seminar, and closer to the time we'll go over it again.
I think what's important is people make a choice, and usually on advice. Make the choice based on our advice. Don't just make a choice based upon what you feel you like, or what the sound of the Arabic word that you like most, or what other people are doing. Is based upon advice. So if you're going a short period, definitely do the ifrad. And somebody asking actually for the 12-day Hajj, which type of Hajj would be the most rewarding? Again, scholars differ upon which is the most rewarding. The Hanafi say it's Qiran, the Malikis and the Shafi'i say it's ifrad, and the Hanbali say it's tamattu. So they're going to disagree upon the most rewarding. Do you know why they disagree and why it's a miracle? The Prophet performed one Hajj, and all the scholars are concluding about which is the most rewarding Hajj from the one thing the Prophet did. So they actually didn't, they disagree upon what the Prophet did. And that's a miracle. That everybody who's doing the Hajj this year will do different types of Hajj. All of them will be able to say that I did the Hajj the Prophet did. That's an amazing miracle. The Prophet did one thing, and he's given us so much leeway to do whatever is easier for us. And that's the point I'm trying to impress upon people, is that the acts of Hajj are all within the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And also another question is, so in tamattu Hajj, can you do a sa'i beforehand? And so tamattu hajj obviously is a umrah, and you come out of ihram. If you want to do a sa'i beforehand, you have to precede it with a tawaf. So if somebody wanted to, they would just do a nafil tawaf. You cannot do sa'i by itself. It always has to be preceded. So if the person thinks they have time to do that and the energy to do that, that's perfectly okay. But they'd have to precede it with a tawaf.
Yeah. So you come into Mecca, let's say on the 2 or 3 days before Hajj commences. This is your Umrah, and as part of Umrah, of course, you have to do your sa'i. You come out of Ihram, and then if you want to go into, and then the 8th of the Hijjah when Hajj starts, if you want to bring forward the sa'i of Hajj, then you have to do another tawaf as
So
a
that's
shift.
difficult. So if imagine you were
Very
about to move
difficult.
from Mina and you're going to tawaf and sa'i. it, the
Sorry.
word tamattu means to enjoy yourself.
Yeah. We had this it wasn't last year, I think it was the year before. Do you remember, Sheikh? Some brothers were very adamant, very keen,
And
and
they
then
wanted, yeah, they wanted to destroy themselves. Like,
at
they
the
have
end,
these rough obstacle courses. So they had
uh,
this understand that tamattu means to go through an obstacle course. And I was explaining in Arabic, tamattu means to enjoy yourself. And it was to
yeah.
take it easy. So, Allahu Alam, I must have missed something.
So hopefully that's clear. We'll take any live questions if anybody. We have about 6 minutes. So if you have any questions, you want to raise your hand, you can come on live, and then a couple of announcements, and then inshallah we can close. Do you have any more in the chat? So can the sa'i be done in advance of tamattu? Yes, we answered that. Will there be a poster with all the steps for Hajj Qiran too? Yes, there will be one for Qiran, but out of we'll share it again. But there will be one for Qiran. But ifrad and tamattu, I don't know about you, Sheikh, if you've come across anybody who's done Qiran, but normally
So
um,
Qiran
tamattu and
is
ifrad.
exactly the same as ifrad for the majority, Maliki, Shafi, and Hanbali. The form of it is exactly the same. The intention's different. That's all.
So would you cut your hair uh,
At the end, right
after?
at the end, right at the end. Yeah.
But how does the because Qiran is Umrah and Hajj.
Yeah, but the Qiran is called I mean, it's technical, but it's a type of tamattu because you're getting the benefit of Umrah and Hajj, but you're only doing one tawaf and sa'i at the beginning. So essentially, what you're doing is you're the Malikis, the Shafi'is and the Hanbalis, argue about what tamattu is. Is it Qiran? A lot of scholars say Qiran is actually tamattu. So there's not
Mm,
really a difference. The only difference is the Hanafis actually make it two separate things. So Qiran essentially for them is Umrah, but you stay in Ihram
yeah.
and then you go. So essentially for the Hanafis, you would have to do Tawaf al-Qudum, and then you'd have to do Umrah, Tawaf and Sa'i, and then you'd have to do the Hajj actions. So it becomes very prolonged. So the Hanafis are strictly Umrah, and Hajj joined together is Qiran for them in one Ihram, but the majority don't have that opinion.
But you cut or shave your hair just once on the day of Eid.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
for both,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll try and put something together for Quran because it sounds like it's a straightforward one, inshallah, also. Um, is it possible to do more than one Umrah? I don't know if that's. Do
So
you
is it,
mean?
what do you mean, possible or should one do?
Yeah.
So the thing about the Hajj, the journey of Hajj is specifically for the three types of ihram that we mentioned. There's no specific restriction once you, for example, have completed all the actions of Hajj and you've completed all the steps of Hajj, like the Rami, and you've come, and then there's nothing less for you to do except Tawaf al-Wida. You could be there for 4 or 5 days later until you're about to leave. There's nothing technically stopping a person doing Umrah, but it's not recorded that any of the Salaf early scholars did an Umrah extra at that time. It's not mentioned at all.
Mm. Someone who is pregnant, which Hajj type do you recommend? And can my Hajj type be different to my spouse?
Yeah, the Hajj type can be different from the spouse, obviously, because it depends on the spouse. One of them might want a more arduous one, which would be Qiran, for example, or Ifrad. So for a woman that's pregnant, it'd be easier if she's coming earlier that she does tamattu, which means that she can she's able to, come out of the restrictions of ihram. But if she's coming, right at the end, one day, it wouldn't make any difference. It would probably be easier just to stay in ihram.
Mhm. Um, can we perform a second Umrah for a dead person? Maybe this could be after Hajj, perhaps.
Yeah, so that's
So,
it. I mean, there is a situation if somebody had made a vow to do an umrah, for example. So to alleviate them of the vow, they would do that after the days of Hajj, after the actions of Hajj. So the important thing is, scholars generally disapprove of people doing actions of Hajj during the days of Hajj. Sorry, doing anything other than the actions of Hajj during the days of Hajj. In other words, it should be restricted to the actions
mm,
of Hajj itself. But once those are finished, there's not it's not a strong prohibition against anything like that.
okay. I don't know if this is a question or it's the way it's written is. Hold on, I think she's written it. We are coming one day before, so would it be Quran? Qiran, if yes, then would the cutting, shaving hair only once Hajj rituals are completed? Ah, okay. So yeah, they want to do Qiran. They're coming one day before Hajj commences on the 3rd of June. Would the cutting or shaving of the hair only occur once Hajj rituals are complete?
Yeah, yeah, that comes right
Yeah,
at the end. So the ihram is only
she said that.
come out of
Yeah.
once at the end.
Okay. What Hajj option does someone have if they come to Mecca from Medina on the 3rd of June, which is one day before, which is what we did in a couple of
Yes,
years
this is
ago.
what we did. We did ifrad.
Yeah, we did Ifrad, yeah.
Yeah, and
So Ifrad,
there's somebody insisting on the Qiran, so they did Qiran. But essentially, yeah. So that's the option. Your option is tight. So you would do ifrad. The Prophet ﷺ did ifrad from Dhul Hulayfa. So the Prophet traveled by land, passed through the miqat, and did the ihram for ifrad.
for Ifrad, do we have to perform Umrah in the same year?
So if for ifrad, so of ifrad, obviously in terms of the Hajj itself, there's no umrah in the actual act of Hajj. Okay, so that's the first thing.
Yes.
So in terms of is there an obligation to perform umrah after it? There's no obligation to join the ifrad with an umrah later on.
When in Ihram, how do we maintain cleanliness when in a public setting, assuming we can swap the Ihram clothing if it's spoiled?
Yeah, so just generally, water can be used to remove impurities, and you can also change your clothing as well.
Okay. Uh, we've answered that, we've answered that, we've answered that. Okay, I have not received visa yet. Is it okay to fill out the registration form? This is an admin question, but the answer is yes. If you're talking about the Al Bayt registration form, yes, you can complete it. Um, I think you also covered this, Sheikh. What would be your recommendation to balance the understanding of the essence of Hajj and the details? Where should the focus be at this stage?
Yeah, so I answered that. I read it and answered it when you
Yeah,
were otherwise um, involved in
busy.
something.
Okay, I think we've answered that as well, Fatullah. Okay,
Yes.
I think that's. Do we have any hands raised?
Yes, Abdul Wahid, there's one.
Okay, if you can unmute yourself.
Brother
Hmm.
Shoaib, can you unmute yourself?
Assalamu alaikum. Can you, am I unmute?
Alaikum
Can you hear me?
assalam. Yes, go ahead, Shreem.
Assalamu Sheikh. So I just wanted to clarify. So I'm on the 12-day package with my mum now. So would it be quite tight to perform the Quran, or do you recommend us performing the Ifrad?
Yeah, so unless you're insisting on doing, it depends why you want to do Qiran. Can I ask why you'd like to do that?
Yeah. So I had asked the question about what's the most rewarding in terms of
Oh, okay,
for
okay,
the Hanafi school. So that
okay,
that that would be my reason. But
okay. So if you're going
that
to do Qiran according to the Hanafis, it would be almost no, I wouldn't say impossible if yourself and your mother, because according to the Hanafis, the Qiran is essentially you do ihram, you come to Mecca, you perform tawaf and sa'i for umrah. So you finish the umrah. Okay.
Uh,
And then what you do is you perform tawaf al-qudum,
mhm,
and this is before going anywhere. And then you can do the sa'i early
mhm,
or not. It's up to yourself. Okay. And then obviously you go to Mina and all these things, and then you have
mhm,
to do the tawaf and sa'i on the day of Hajj
mhm.
itself. Okay. So you've got essentially you've got tawaf and then a sa'i,
Yep.
and then you got another tawaf and possibly another sa'i, but you're going to do a tawaf and sa'i anyway. So you got, in terms of major, walking episodes, you've
Yeah.
got, good, what, 6 or 7 there. According to Hanafis, it would be very restrictive if you're arriving in
Mhm,
Jeddah, getting to Mecca, and then without acclimatizing, having to perform tawaf and sa'i. According to the Hanafis, that's going to be difficult. If you want to do Qiran, the majority of scholars generally say that it's the same as ifrad.
mhm,
The only difference would be that you have to sacrifice an animal. Okay, that's the only difference. So essentially, if you insist on doing Qiran and you accept to do it according to the other schools of law, you can do it, and essentially it's you get the reward of Qiran, but you're doing it in a much shorter way, because you're basically, if you look at how the ifrad is on that infograph that they'll show you, it's essentially the same thing, but your only difference will be your intention. In other
Yep.
words, when you and your mother go into the ihram, your intention, you will say, "I'm doing Qiran," and the second thing practically will be that you will have to each sacrifice a animal,
mhm,
okay, because it's Qiran and not ifrad. So again, if you were fixated on following the Hanafi school
mhm.
very strictly, then I would say it's practically improbable to do it in that
Okay.
short period of time. Yeah,
Okay. No.
I would strongly not advise doing it. Yeah.
Okay. No. Appreciate that.
Okay.
That's helpful.
Assalamu
Jazakallah. Jazakallah.
alaikum.
Sorry.
Salam.
Are there any more? We'll take one more if there is.
No, there isn't any more.
No? Okay.
Close
We'll
it.
close there because it's been an hour and 15 minutes. Okay, Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. And Sheikh, inshallah, we'll forward these infographics as well, Sheikh, for you to look over and for your comments. And Sheikh will be with us, inshallah, on Hajj. We can benefit from his wise words and his experience through the reminders, inshallah. Just a couple of quick announcements for everybody. The walking groups, inshallah, the next or the second walk will be tomorrow at 11 a.m. The updated poster was shared in the group, so please look out for that. If you can't join a walking group, we hope that you are physically preparing yourselves anyway, inshallah. And secondly, inshallah, over the next few days, you may receive a courtesy call from one of our guides. It's just a courtesy call to see how you're getting on, if you've got any specific questions or queries, and just to get some information. So it's a courtesy call from one of our guides, so don't be alarmed if you don't recognize the number or anything. But inshallah, we'll try and do that over the next few days. So we'll close there, Sheikh, if you want to close with a short dua.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد في الأولين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد في الآخرين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد في الملأ الأعلى يوم الدين ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا رب اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الراحمين رب اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الراحمين تقبل منا صلاة وصياما وركوعنا وسجودنا وحجنا إن شاء الله سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين